Hi there.
Hi. Oh, wow. My volume is like turned all the way up. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for joining. We'll get started formally here in a second.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to get signed on. So it's great to see you and great to have you on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. It's the first time for us using this IG Live. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Are you going to start doing these consistently?
That's the plan. Yeah, we'd like to start doing them at least monthly, maybe even more.
That's, that's great.
Yeah.
I always said, I keep trying to do Instagram lives. Well, I think to plan it and then I never end up like following through.
Yeah. I know. So much
It
going
seems
on.
like such a great thing, but whenever I do it, it's because it's very spontaneous. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I have a second. I'm actually just going to jump on.
Let's do it. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Get started just a second here. All right, so we're going to get started on our first ever live Inclusion Matters Education Services session here. So I'm Dr. David Palmer, and I'm the founder and director of Inclusion Matters Education Services. And we have our wonderful guest tonight, Kayla Coburn from Inclusion Starts Now. Woo!
Woo!
So I saw on your website, you're an aide turned teacher, turned educational specialist, turned inclusion consultant. And so as we've been chatting back and forth on Instagram and seeing that we're aligning in a lot of our values and what we do, we thought it'd be cool just to do a live collab and find ways that we can continue to support and include students with disability that, I like what you say, that works best for their community, their situation.
Yeah.
And so again, thanks for joining us tonight, Kayla. And we're doing this live chat so that we can answer this big question, right? What is inclusion and why does inclusion matter? That's
Yes.
what we want to look at tonight. And so I know that if there's questions as they're watching, inclusion matters, inclusion starts now. We wanted to start out by saying that inclusion is not only our business name, right? It's not just our contemporary catchphrase, because it seems to be everybody's talking about inclusion now, but I believe we're here together because it's the core of everything we do, and it's more than a program. It's a mindset, it's a culture. And so I want to jump right into it and ask you some questions because I want to
Yeah.
get to know you. This is our first time talking together. So what got you into Inclusion Starts Now? How'd you go from that aide to teacher to specialist to now what you do?
So, I guess first, there's really so much. And I feel like a lot of people, their story is that they knew someone with a disability, and that was kind of just what got them in there. And that's just not my story. I don't have any family members with like a diagnosed disability. Um, but I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And so that was like, I used to teach my little sister in our playroom, and I was a very strict teacher back then. Uh, but I just kind of like always gravitated towards children. I loved their energy and just their genuine ability to like just communicate and be. And then I found this place I used to volunteer where it was for kids. Most of them were diagnosed with autism,
Mhm.
and we played sports, and I just loved it. And then I went to grad school at San Francisco State, and they were very about inclusion, and everything was like, how can you get your students included? And I was like, oh, easy. Like everyone must be learning this. This makes so much sense. I got my first teaching job, and they were like, oh yeah, we don't really do
Oh,
inclusion here. And I was just
oh,
like,
wow.
what do you mean?
We don't do inclusion. Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely was. And then I went to a school where I was like the youngest by 10 years. Like most of the teachers were on their way to retiring in the next 5 years. But fresh out of college, ready to make change, I just really pushed for inclusion by I mean, first, getting genuine relationships with my coworkers, having like getting them to trust me, and just kind of like slowly and steady, just getting my kids in the classrooms. But it took a lot of work. And so throughout my years of increasing inclusive practices for a lot of my students, I learned that like it looks very different on everybody, even by school. Every school views it differently. Their teachers are all over the place on how they feel about it. And I made Inclusion Starts Now like an Instagram account years ago.
Wow.
Like
How long?
5, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Like whenever I became a teacher, I like made this account, but I was just not consistent with it. It was like, I'll post, and then I stopped, and it was like my friends following me. And then I think last year or 2 years ago, I like stopped my personal account, and I'm like, okay, this is it. And then we moved from California to Washington. And since we moved here, I had to give up my job because it was a California job. And once I moved here, I was like, okay, like let's figure this out. Because I kind of went all over the place. I like designed shirts. I made this book. I was posting, like I was making all these random connections, but I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do. I want to work with schools. So now I'm in that process of figuring out how to get into schools.
Yeah.
Which has been
Well,
a
that's
whole
awesome.
other journey.
Yeah. No, I like the uniqueness of your story because, our story is working with not only students in a school setting, but we have 6 kids, but 5 of them are adopted and neurodivergent. So I like how each of us have our own stories that gets us to this important work. Let's step back for a second, though. When we talk about inclusion, how would you describe it to someone that says, what is inclusion? I don't even know what inclusion is. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody says our schools should have and be inclusive. But for you, what does that phrase mean?
The definition that I kind of came up with a little bit ago was being able to choose what community you want to be a part of, and having that opportunity to choose. And that takes teaching students with disabilities to advocate and be independent and like push for independence. And I know a lot of people have responded to me of just like students are not able to be independent or not able to advocate for themselves. And I always respond with like, well, I feel like we can try a different way then. Like whatever you guys are doing now isn't working. So let's figure out a different way to get them to communicate and, figure out what they want. Because I mean, maybe a student doesn't want to be included. I know people who don't like to be in a big group. Like
sometimes it's good just to be alone, right?
Yeah, but like giving them the opportunity to make that decision is so much more important. And just because they might have a dysregulated behavior in a class doesn't mean they don't want to be included and a part of their community.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that word opportunity. I'm glad you used that word because that's really what we're offering. We're empowering students and others to be able to advocate so they can have that opportunity if they choose. I love that. And that's where we're at too with this whole empowering teachers, empowering parents, but of course, empowering the students and wanting to get them to that place where they can advocate for themselves and say, I want to be part of this community.
Yeah.
And working to break down any barriers that might be there in that community. And it's interesting because I'm kind of late to the game as well in special education. I got my degree in biology long time ago, was a science teacher in high school for forever, it seems. And then for me, it clicked. And so working through just recently in the recent years through some of the special education stuff that I've been doing. And for one class, it was interesting. We had to watch a video about inclusion, and the video was made probably in the early 90s. And they were talking about inclusion. I mean, if it wasn't so dated in how it was filmed and how they dressed or whatever, you could think, wow, somebody's saying that today. And it got me thinking about, we've been talking about inclusion in schools since the 90s. Where in your work and in your teaching have you seen that we've made some progress in inclusion from the 90s, but also why are we still talking about it and why is it still a challenge to bring schools to a place where they can be truly inclusive?
Yes. So I went to school in the 90s. That was my time that I started school. And looking at what my experience was like, there was a special education classroom, but we never saw them.
Mm.
They had their classroom in the portable. They had recess and lunch at different times than us. I mean, maybe I would see them at their own lunch table away from everybody else, and that was it. Um, the high school that I went to, they now made a cheerleading team for the children that are in the special education classroom. And some of the cheerleaders, I think, are on like both teams, which is great. That's a great first step of having everybody being a part of something. I mean, unfortunately, they're not a part of the like actual cheer team. It's like this subgroup, but it's a step from where we were when I was there. That wasn't even an opportunity for them. And now the students that are in the special education classroom are starting to get more involved with the school. Why I think I really think people's mindsets on the school. I could probably talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
And go down some crazy rabbit holes.
With you.
But
Another live session, right?
Yeah. I feel like the school system is just not doing very well. I know I've heard a lot about like how the school system kind of started to like keep people in this like uniformed way to then go to jobs that like, you know, like they're kind of like funneling people into like they don't want these like huge leaders coming out of schools or something. And like the testing for schools, like I just feel like there's so much pressure on teachers to like test and make sure they're teaching everybody the right thing. And I just think that's like not really the point of school. I mean, we do want to be learning and we want to be critically thinking and, you know, learning everything that we should be learning, but we should be doing it together as a community. Like we should also be learning to like make accommodations for everybody. Everybody needs accommodations once in a while. Like, I mean, just the facts that a lot of people end up getting a disability at some point in their life. I mean, being pregnant is considered a disability. And it's just crazy to me that, you know, someone becomes pregnant and they're like, we'll give you, you know, all this help. But then if someone has a disability, it's like, well, you know, you're probably happy over there by that table. And anyways, I'm definitely going all over the place.
No, this is
great.
Like
it's our mindset. I feel like there's a lot of ableism embedded in the system that we aren't really aware of. And, you know, just trying to break that down is really trying to get rid of that is really hard.
It is. It's so ingrained, isn't it, into everything. Very systemic. And I was with the neuroaffirming parent last night and we talked for some length, you know, and kind of riffed back and forth on some of our ideas. But I appreciate your perspective, and I appreciate how you said they're taking steps. But in your mind, what would an ideal inclusive school and classroom look like?
Man, yeah, I've thought about this a lot. Part of me, one of my crazy ideas once was like, maybe I'll just open up a preschool. Like I'll just start it and I'll be like, here, let me show you how we do inclusion. And then we're going to like, just keep it going. But I gave up on that because that didn't go very far. But, I mean, I think every student, so I don't think that there should be like a general education and a special education classroom. Like I think those should just be out. Everybody is in a classroom. The students who have disabilities that are, you know, like more extensive support needs, I don't think they should all be in one room. I definitely think, I mean, just like when you're dividing students into two classrooms, like at a primary grade level, they, you know, try to split up children. Like if there's 10 children that are lower readers, they don't try to put all 10 of them in one class. They split them up so it could be somewhat of like this equal way to get to all the students. So, you know, everyone would be split up in these classrooms. And I think aide support is really important, which I know aides don't get paid enough. They don't get taught much at times. Like a lot of their education is also like falls on the teacher's responsibility, which I think is not realistic. I mean, there's like a whole problem with like teaching in general. No one's getting paid enough. No one's working the hours that they're supposed to be working. But everyone in the classroom. And then I definitely think there should still be a room for sensory needs or for breaks or for maybe one-on-one learning if that is what you need for a specific subject. Like there needs to be times where students, but that should be offered to all students. Like I don't think that should only be for students with IEPs. I think it should be if any student is having a hard time, we need to teach students how to like ask for a break and how to support themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think it's hard. I do think it's a hard thing to teach. Because now that I have two kids, I've been thinking a lot about like, yeah, they have a big behavior and you're like, you start panicking. So you're like, oh my God, like, wait, stop, don't do that. But that's like not helpful for anybody. And instead of like trying to get them to feel that behavior and help them learn how to cope with those feelings that they're having, if it's like being overstimulated by something, if things are being too loud, or you have a lot of energy, you're scared, or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, no, those are
I hope that was a good answer.
No, I think along the same line, and in all my studying as well. I mean, we pretty much figured it out what it should look like, and it was just like what you said, right? I mean, it's students of various abilities in all classrooms. We are able to, if they have more extensive needs or they need some one-on-one reading, maybe with dyslexia, they need some one-on-one reading. You have somebody there to do that. But this idea, which I don't see happening a lot, even of co-teaching, where you have in one classroom, you would have two teachers. You would have one that's more the content specialist and one that's more aware of all the different needs that all the students would have, not just those with IEPs. And then you're co-teaching, and so while the content teacher may be teaching a science lesson, they're included. And then, with good teaching practices, because really teachers shouldn't be just standing up in front as dispensers of information, right? Kids learn by doing. So that, as you have that time where they're on task and working, then you can go through and be able to give each one the specialized attention that they need, whether they have the 504 or IEP, but making sure that in the current system, those who have those are definitely getting attended to as well. So yeah, it's an amazing thing because it's not just a school issue, right? It's a culture issue. Like you said, the ableism. If somebody's on live right now and they're like, what is ableism? How would you explain that to them?
So ableism is discriminating against someone with a disability. And there are sections basically of ableism. There's like societal ableism of which I actually just saw. I think it was like a TikTok about this, where there was a sign at a store that said, like, if you have a disability, we refuse service to you.
What?
And the reason, and this is legally acceptable because I guess in the ADA, there's like a random clause that if there's only one person like working at a gas station, they can like turn you away because there's only one person and they don't have the support to help you, which I thought was crazy, but that is just like legally you do not get to be helped, which is ridiculous. And then ableism, like towards interpersonal ableism is like, oh, you're so pretty for a disabled person. Or like, oh yeah, we all have autism. Like those are very just like not like being an ally of like, if someone came to you and said like, I am struggling with anxiety or something, you'd be like, oh, we're all anxious, don't think about it. Like that's just like negating how we feel and what we're going through. And then the last one was like internal ableism. So being disabled and growing up in this community and then having, feeling self-doubt towards yourself because of what you've been told all your life. And I mean, my biggest example of ableism that I like to talk about is when people get the diagnosis when their baby is still in utero, and the conversation is, do you want to keep the baby? Or I'm so sorry. It's very negative, when I don't feel like that's helpful at all. What
Right.
should be happening is like, okay, the test came back positive, for Down syndrome. Let me tell you what that can look like.
And how we
Let me tell
can
you what
actually support you, right?
yeah, what your expectations should be once the baby is born. Like, and this is not like a pro-choice or pro-life debate. It's just a comment of the ableism that like we've okayed for so long. But think about these moms and dads who are getting this diagnosis and then being told like, oh, sorry, like,
Yeah.
there's nothing to be sorry about.
Okay, I got to take a quick pause right here, just to
Yeah.
explain something that's kind of funny. So we're doing the Instagram live, okay, and I have ADHD, so it's when lots of things are moving or are going at the same time, I get wow. So I see all these little hearts and all these little waves, and so trying to listen to you and interact, and then my wife is here; she's off camera, but Laura's here helping me out here. So
Hi,
yes,
Laura.
I'm thankful for that. Or there. As you're talking about ableism, I'm not sure how many folks really understand the tie-in between ableism and racism, and how special education law in a lot of ways came out of the civil rights movement, and how, again, we are still in a place where, like the ableism, we are continually having to battle that in even little ways, microaggressions. And even I've seen how adults talk to children, maybe with Down syndrome or something, and it's almost like belittling that person and not valuing them as a person. And really, it's a human right to have dignity and to be valued, and to embrace and celebrate diversity. And so that's going to be something I know we're going to be talking about and working toward probably rest of our lives, and hopefully others will join after and be able to really remedy a lot of these injustices that are going on. Now, let's get practical. Let's get boots on the ground here. I love talking theoretical, systemic change. How can we impact the bigger picture? But I'm thinking about the parent who's like, I hear what you guys are saying, and I'd really like to be an agent of change. I really would want to learn how I can work for a more inclusive school setting, not only for my child, but for all kids. And like in your situation, that's where you started. You're looking at the whole picture and saying, how can I advocate for inclusion? So there may be even teachers, para-educators, administrators. I don't know who's watching this or who will watch this. Give me a few practical tips. Let's break it up. Okay, so let's start as a parent, okay? Make it easier.
Okay.
Dad sitting here. I'm finding out that my student's being excluded from certain activities at school. My student wants to be more in the classroom, may have some struggles with regulating emotions, and that could be due to triggers in the classroom. And it's a whole nother discussion of where those come from. But Dad here sits here and says, all right, Kayla, what are some basic steps as a parent I can do to get the ball rolling?
Yes. Okay. So first, I do feel like if the IEP team or administrator, teacher, those are, I feel like, two very big players. If they are really pushing against you and not wanting your child to be included, I would say get an advocate. You need to get more people on your side. That's the first thing. Second, definitely put inclusion in IEP goals, so then they legally have to do it. That is one of my favorite teacher hacks of being like, well, they need to be with a peer to do this goal, so I guess we gotta keep it going. Um, Third, I feel it's a lot of like just lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I feel like when people are against inclusion, it's because they had a bad experience and there wasn't they you can't just put a child who might have dysregulated behaviors frequently into a class and be like, well, figure it out. Like we got them in the class. Because that's not helpful for anybody. When I was practicing inclusion at my first school, we first there was a relationship building
Mm,
going
I
on with
love
me
that.
and the staff. Like we also like I had to be included in the community.
Mhm.
Um,
Same team,
so
right?
yeah,
Same
they
team.
trusted me. I
Right.
trusted them. Like we had worked together. Uh, and then I went to all the classrooms and I did an ability awareness activity to talk to the students. And it was just talking about like, this student sometimes communicates, like when they get really excited, they
Hmm.
scream. And what's best for you to do is show them what they should do when they're excited and be like, oh, are you excited? Do that. Like, so we would practice how to communicate with each other. And we would practice that everybody's different. Like, what are differences that you love? Whatever it was. Um, I would not do simulations. I don't know. We don't need to talk about that because, again, that's probably a long
Hmm.
conversation. But I did not do those. Ability awareness activities, we're focusing on that people need different things. We're all different,
Hmm.
and that's fine. We all deserve to be here. We all want to be here. Um, and then lastly, giving it time. I guess, and like not if you come in like hot and mad, I feel like everyone builds walls and it's not going to work. And there just needs to be trust in the team, and with everyone. So, if you're really looking for someone to hire one of us. We'll come in and educate your schools.
Hmm.
We'll get the ball rolling.
That's where I was leading into, because I mean, we can unpack. We're promising that we're not going to be on here super long tonight, but each one of those steps, I think, could be a whole conversation in itself.
Yeah.
And just want to remind those who are watching us that as we get closer to the end, we'll be answering some questions. So go ahead and put some questions in the comments or anything that you would like to comment about, and that way we can address some of those in a few minutes. So get an advocate. You said they should get in contact with someone like us. So you do that. We do that. Talk about your advocacy services.
Yeah. So I just kind of started this new thing. I call it Ignite Inclusion. And it's like a 20-week section. I mean, it's really whatever the school needs. But at first, it's about 20 weeks, and we have a certain amount of professional developments. We have a certain amount of like one-on-one coaching, monthly meetings. Because what I have learned just by doing this the last couple years, as not the person who's working on campus, is that like I'm not a part of their community. So I'm coming in as an extra person to help them understand why, like I guess help them get them on our side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, teach them why inclusion is important. I'm giving them tips on what to do. But I can't come in there and, if a student's dysregulated and they're like, here, Kayla, you go show me how to do it. Like that kid doesn't know me. Like I
Right.
can't come in and show you what to do with that
Right.
student. That's not going to work. Um, and I think that's also just really frustrating for people that as an inclusion consultant, I can't actually go into your school and fix the problem. Actually, I came up with this metaphor the other day. I was talking about this with my partner, and I'm like, am I crazy about this? And this is still like rough draft metaphor. So,
Sure.
someday when I'm giving some great presentation about this, you guys will have first looks. But I was thinking about when you're at like a Mexican restaurant and you get chips and like salsa.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know it's usually unlimited, but like, say you pay for it, you don't get the unlimited one, and you're going, and then you're running out of salsa, but you still have all these chips. And so you're like trying with your brain to like, okay, well, I'm going to divide it up smaller salsa. Like, I'm not going to take everything because I need it for all the chips. Um, but in my head, or anyone coming to your school to help you with inclusion is going to give you other ways to get to those to help those chips. If it's giving you guacamole or queso or bean dip, it's giving you other
Mm-hmm.
practices to do that will help you still enjoy the chips. So
Hmm.
that might sound so crazy, but I was thinking about it. I told my partner and he was like, I feel like that's something, but you got to work on
Yeah.
that. But I don't know.
Oh,
That we
I
will
get
come in
it.
and give you things to help
Yeah, no, that's
help make it
great.
work.
Yeah, because you want to make sure you have something for those chips, and really giving not just salsa, but there's other options that should be available.
Yeah.
Because I might think the salsa's too spicy, and so now you're going to say I can't enjoy chips and salsa when there may be a more mild salsa or guacamole. I'm getting hungry. All right, so
I know.
I know that's so good. So so you work primarily with developing in schools inclusion. We
Yeah.
work more on the individual level, so it's really coming alongside parents because, and you can read more of our story on our website, but that's where we're starting. So we're kind of a business that is flowing out of our experience as parents, and working with parents over these last few years and just listening to their frustration, like, I don't know why I can't get what my child needs, or why are they telling me this, or why are we doing that? And so I love sitting down with parents and saying, okay, we have the law side, we have the education side, but we also have this piece where you as a parent are not only fighting for inclusion in school, but trying to give them the tools they need even at home,
Yeah.
to help support their kids. So I like that. I mean, I think it's two aspects of the same thing, and there's definitely a lot of room for more advocacy in schools and parents needing to get good information,
Yeah.
not just what they're hearing from here or there. And then you said inclusive IEP goals.
Yes.
Can you think of an example of a non-inclusive or an exclusive IEP goal and an inclusive IEP goal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I call it exclusive, but it's like just a reading goal of like the student is going to learn is going to answer questions that like they're going to read a passage of a story and they're going to answer WH questions
Mm-hmm.
or who questions. Um, and instead of saying like with teacher support as the person assisting, it could say like with peer
Mm-hmm.
support, like after they read a passage with a peer, or maybe the peer is reading them the passage if they're not able to read yet. Um, so just adding little things like that of just saying that like a peer will be with them doing the work. And it's not that the peer is going to be the teacher because they're not. The peer is their peer. Um, but yes,
Yeah,
so
that's
I am seeing
great
all the questions.
because you're including.
I see all
You're,
the comments too.
yeah, you're not. You are the queen. Um,
Hi, Dallas and Katrina.
that is so fun. This is great. I'm enjoying this. Yeah, I'm probably going to end up doing a lot more of these and seeing what we can do. But because I'm actually working on an IEP for next Monday, and I was looking over the goals that were there from last year and trying to work through. And I think the key thing as a teacher is going off of what I know the student can do. And
Hmm.
I had an experience real quick with this student that they had an IEP goal that said that, with the support of speech to text and that they could be able to write four or five sentences on a topic or something. And so I looked at that and I said, I think this student can do more, and I know they can do more. And so we have these big, we call them LFD touch screens in our classrooms. And so what I did is I hooked up the keyboard and mouse to this big screen, put up a dock, and then we began dialoguing and talking about our writing. And I would give her, some things to think about, and just watching her type it out. And when she got to words that she couldn't spell, we worked it out, because I'm supporting her in her reading as well. And she started making index cards that had words to spell because she wanted to remember these words. So now as I'm looking at that goal, I mean, it's amazing. And I put met, right, for this term. And so now I'm thinking, okay, what are some of those goals? And I'm thinking the same things about being inclusive. How can I make our goals more inclusive and less cookie cutter?
Yeah.
Okay. And then educating people. You're right. A lot of people have had a bad experience. And I like what you said. We have to be careful not to come in hot or come in saying, as parents, the law states, as if we're trying to this power struggle. So all of those are amazing. And again, I would love to expand on them, but I also would love to answer some questions. So I'm going to go to my producer here. Okay. Would a monetary gift to a one-on-one aide be acceptable? This was from Jane the Park. So what do you think? If you had an aide who was doing an exceptional job, would it be okay to give them a gift?
So I tried very hard to befriend my aides or the aides. I do think it's very confusing, the teacher-aide relationship, because it's like the teacher does run the classroom, but like this is the staff that you see the most. Like these are the people I feel like you get the closest with because you're in this, classroom together. I definitely got them gifts. As the teacher. I don't know if you're talking about as the teacher, as the parent.
I think maybe both.
But parents, I totally think they should. Because the aides do so much with the students. I mean, the aides are the one, because when I was the one-on-one aide, I was the one going to recess and the bathroom and the lunch, the transitions. Like I felt like I was doing so much work when the teachers had like all this paperwork to do. And I remember being really mad about that. But then you become the teacher and then you see how stressed out it is the other way. But as the teacher, I really wanted, again, like gaining that trust with the aides, because most of the aides were there before I was there, and then I'm sitting there like, hey, we're gonna like practice inclusion. Okay, this is totally different. You guys are all gonna be out of the classroom with students. Yeah, you'll figure it out. It's gonna be great. So definitely,
yeah, that's good.
I love it.
Yeah, and I like what Discover with Dallas says, Christmas gift cards. I have an awesome aide as well that I work with, and I say she works with me, not for me. And my wife baked some cookies for her. She loved that. So I think those little gestures of, hey, we see you, what you're doing is valuable. And they always, like you said, they don't always get the rectification that they should be getting.
I love that you just said that, because in the deaf-blind community, the aides are called interveners, and their motto is do with, not for. And so I just love that. That's exactly what you just said.
As a team, and I don't want to set up anything. All right, looking here what why does a all right.
I want to know what does for.
Okay. And I've had this like cold for a few weeks and getting over it, but okay, so what does a full inclusive school mean? That was asked from Dallas.
So to me, it's all the students in all the classrooms. There's not this specification of general ed and special ed. And there is a room that is built for people to have one-on-one academic learning if they need it, to have sensory breaks if they need it. Like this is the room that if they're feeling dysregulated, they can come and use it, and everybody can use the room. That it's not, and there might be multiple rooms. It depends how big the school is. It totally depends on the community. But fully inclusive to me is that everyone is involved in their community. And that could even mean, that does mean during work, but that also means like during recess and during lunch, like the students, all the students with disabilities sitting in one table by themselves is not being included with the rest of their peers.
Yeah, I like to think of inclusion even in deeper terms of belonging, right? A person feels like they belong with everybody and they're an equal, because I think sometimes when we talk about inclusion, we think, well, I do include the, different kinds of kids and what I do, again, but it's kind of like they're there as a guest, and they're not really into the community. They're not family, and that's what we're striving for.
Yes. And
Um,
I feel like
go ahead.
we'll be closer to inclusion when people stop saying how much of a saint I am for working with people with disabilities.
Isn't that interesting?
That kills
Yeah.
me. Whenever people say that, I'm like, okay, you know nothing. We're
Yeah.
not starting this
Yes.
conversation today. I mean, I've had people come up to me and just be like, good job. I'm like, what? This
Yeah.
I'm with a student, I'm with a kid at the zoo. We're having fun. What are you talking? Like, why are you telling me good job? You good job for being here too, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Again, that ableist mindset. So a lot of it
Yeah.
is that mindset. Uh, let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, somebody asked about the interveners. They never heard of that before, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
That's
there,
just like a term in the deaf-blind world. I'm not entirely sure why it's interveners. I used to teach about it. I used to teach interveners how to be interveners. But it's usually that they have a special set of skills to work with people who are deaf-blind.
yeah,
So they might know sign language or Braille. They're way more focused on like tactile information for education.
yeah. No, that's great. I like the intervener. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's, all kinds of different, I think there's more positive ways to, to have these discussions. I know we're running
Yeah.
out of time here, so I'm loving what you're bringing to the table, and I wish we could do more. So we're probably going to have some more where we can chat about different things. So I just want to say thank you, Kayla, for being willing to come on to the
Yeah.
Instagram Live. And I know that those who have been able to watch, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining on. And just grateful for you, grateful for the audience, grateful for people who care about inclusion and really want to work to make not only schools, but really our world a more inclusive place. Do you have anything coming up that we should know about that we might want to connect with you on?
Yes. Um, I guess two things. So first, I have this new book. So I wrote a book. I put it near me.
And I
Tyler the
wanted to talk
Snake.
to you about the
I
authorship.
know.
That's another
That's a
conversation.
whole other thing. This is only on Amazon, but it'll soon be off of Amazon because I'm trying to like boycott Amazon bookstores. But I made a new one called Dallas the Dog, which is actually Discover with Dallas. It's based off of Dallas. Um, so, anyways, did it for representation. But I was working with Dallas's mom, Katrina, with a new nonprofit called the Recess Project. And it's helping schools get inclusive playground equipment. And we just started this year. We are about to hit our goal with the first school. And that has been really awesome. But we've been running into a lot of people who are just like, we need resources. Like, how do you fundraise? How do you do this? And it's definitely just showing, like what you were saying, how do we give a parent all the resources they need to get inclusion happening? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I love
So
that because it's
hopefully
not
that
just
will
a
keep
classroom
going
thing.
too.
It could be a whole school thing.
Yeah. But
So
definitely is a whole school thing.
if folks, I know they know this from our posts and that, but if folks wanted to get in touch with you, or they may even say, hey, I want to be able to supply some resources for things like that, how would they
Yeah.
get a hold of you?
Really, anyway, Inclusion Starts Now is like my handle everywhere. Kayla at inclusionstartsnow.com is my email. Inclusionstartsnow.com is my website. My Instagram is Inclusion Starts Now. You can message me there. I respond to everything. And if I don't respond, it's because I didn't get it. Or it's like not, sometimes I know when I'm not like following someone, it doesn't come through
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But reaching out to me however you want, I respond probably too fast. I probably need to set a boundary with social media, but another day.
I know it's when that passion starts cranking, right? It's like you want to be there and help. And so, yeah, I would recommend folks looking at your website. I would recommend folks looking through your Instagram posts because you just learn so much through that, and keep doing that because it's so important. And if they want to find out more about us at Inclusion Matters, it's the same thing. We're on Instagram at Inclusion Matters Ed, ED, and or inclusionmattersed.com. And we're really here, again, talking last night with someone on a podcast. We need to really be working together, and we need to be taking that time to build those relationships so that we make sure the kiddos are the ones who really get the benefit of it all. So this is going to conclude our time. And
Yeah.
just want to again say thank you. And yeah, we'll be in touch back and forth. Maybe we can do some 40-minute specifics on things. I think that would be really cool too.
Yeah, I'd love that.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much for having me and
Yeah.
connecting on here.
Yes, you bet. So thank you everyone again. And remember at IMES, we believe that all truly means all. So we'll catch you guys soon. All right. Thank you. Whole